So we're looking at the oldest version here of the registered non-account. I'm going to pause it real quick because what I want to point out here is that we're looking at side-by-side video here. And when we're looking at this and it's scrunched down, it's very unusual. You'd wonder, why would you duplicate this? Right? It doesn't make any sense. But this is where we realize it's not duplicated. What we're looking at is actually two different cameras that are looking down to collect this data at the same time. And they're from slightly different angles. So I'll show you guys the proof after that. And notice this mouse that just came into the screen over here. When this mouse moves, it doesn't update these coordinates we see in the bottom left. These coordinates we see in the bottom left are not being updated by that mouse. They're being updated by some other analog that's coming into play here. And we can actually see, like right there very briefly, the mouse and the screen are moving. In fact, it looks like it might be like they're unlocking something and then they're moving the screen around. Right? Because the mouse stays still and then they move the screen around. And that's why we think they're using this plural view 3D like mouse. Now, this first orb comes in. This is coming in at like Mach 3. This plane's going 150, 200 miles an hour. This orb's going 10 times faster than it. It's going at 2,000 miles an hour. Now, interestingly enough, it ricochets past it. It almost looks like some kind of homing device, right? It shoots past it, and then it comes back. And watch what it does over here. It kind of goes around the side of the plane. It doesn't stick right on top of the plane right away, like it's trying to figure out where the plane is. And then it homes in and locks in on the plane. Now, this second orb is really interesting. If you watch very closely, you can see the second orb right there, where it's coming down through the water, or across the water, and then it shoots up through the cloud. There it is. So watch that again. So the second orb is going to shoot across right here, right now. There it is. And there's shooting up through the cloud, and now it's connected to the first orb. And now the third one comes in from the side as well. Now, look at this smoke trail that we see. The very, very clear smoke trail here. These clouds in the background are cumulus clouds, which are very low to the ground. So, and we'll get to the stuff about where the plane went. So if you want to ask those questions, feel free. But what that means is this is not contrails. And I don't think we could see exhaust either. If you look at other planes, exhaust is not really visible in any spectrum. This is smoke that we're seeing here coming from this plane. And that's why the debunkers were trying to prove that this isn't smoke, because this is super damning. Because this means that the plane's on fire. Now, and again, when we're talking on fire, it doesn't mean it's like actively burning up. It means that there's a fire contained in one of the cargo bays, potentially, that has broken containment. And they're trying to battle this fire, right? Now, once the third orb gets into play here, they lock in. And then their pattern begins. And when you watch this pattern, it's super weird. This is where initially, even when I'm looking at it, I'm going, this has got to be, non-human intelligence. Because this is a triangle pattern, right? But it's actually quite, if you think about it and look at like the black triangles that you would see out there in UFOlogy, it's quite a bit different. So it's not exactly like those triangle patterns that you would normally see, at least from the UFOlogy perspective. And now right here, you can see the orientation changes. Now it's vertical. They're completely vertical now. You see this vertical pattern now that they're not circling around anymore. So they first circle around the plane, and then they start this pattern where they're now in a ring formation vertically around it. And then watch what happens here with the zap, poof, right? And when we look at it in the thermal, which we'll look at in a second, we can see that they're closing in the last second. Now the smoke trail just stops right there. Now if this was some type of illusion or magic trick or cloaking, we'd see the smoke trail continue on. The leaker wants to prove it to us, just show us it's not off the screen. So they scroll over to the right. Shows, yeah, there's no smoke trail, there's no more plane. It's just straight up gone, right? And then they close the screen out, which would indicate that what we're looking there is a bigger field of view. And it also indicates that that they're doing this on a recording, essentially. So that was the first video. Now look at this thermal. This is a thermal overlay of the second video, of the image in the second video. It's an exact match to Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. And I was actually pretty embarrassed yesterday when I realized, I knew that this heat signature was down here. And you can tell it's completely different than the heat signature of the engine. Not even close to the same, right? And I had been staring at this and I didn't put two and two together that this is actually in the same location where the landing gear is. And if you look at the piece that I just did today or yesterday, you'll see that the situation with this is that there are two vents right here, two exhaust vents Those are the exhaust vents where we're seeing the smoke come from. It's not coming from the engine. It's coming from the belly of the plane. So this is the second video. We just showed the satellite, stereoscopic. And the stereoscopic we'll prove here in a second. Let me pull that one up too. Stereoscopic, proof of stereoscopic. We're going to pull this one up and have this be up ready to go as well. Okay, so this is the drone. Okay, so here we're looking at an MQ-1C Gray Eagle. And the MQ-1C Gray Eagle, let's just pull that up. Let's do a new window. So this is what we're looking at here, guys. We're looking at one of these bad boys. We need the one that's got the cameras. Now let me see, there's this one right here. There's a good picture of it. Can everyone see this? Yep, okay, good. So you can see these huge cameras are right here, right? And they're on both sides potentially. So let's go back and take a look here. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at an MQ-1C Gray Eagle. And what we're looking at here is an advanced electro-IR camera, okay? So the electro-IR camera has been thermal, they've added a thermal layer to the top of it. So this actually indicates that the person that leaked this was knowledgeable about the systems as well. We can see the same smoke trail. It actually goes right underneath the smoke trail as it's trailing the plane. And then it zooms in and we're watching it here. So this is real footage here. And we would have no idea to understand what this would look like without having seen those 2007 DoD Navy leaks that showed what a FLIR footage might look like. Now, look at this when we're looking at these orbs. You can already start to see the black trails, but watch the black trails closely. They're actually in front of the orbs. So you can see this black trail is actually leading the orb slightly here. And as black trail is leading the orb, it's pulling it forward. And these orbs as well are not being affected by gravity. They are just flying along. There's no visible propulsion that we see coming out of the back of them. They're just floating along, which would indicate superconductivity in general. Now, you see these trails are in front of the orbs there. This is some of the weirdest part for me, is that you look at this and you can see the trails are in front of the orbs in this triangle pattern. We can't see this from the satellite footage. We can only see it from the drone footage. And they're yanking them forward, almost like they're on train tracks here. Now we're going to see that same orientation shift where they become vertical here, right? Now they're vertical again on the plane from a different angle. We can clearly see this heat signature in the belly of the plane here where the landing gear is. And we can, again, clearly see that it's not the same as the engine here. And we can also tell that it's not from the other side because our vision of the other side is obscured by the plane. So this is coming from the belly of the plane. The idea being that, and you can see this trail coming from the back, is that this is hot air coming from the fire that's in the cargo bay. And what we're looking at here is where the exhaust ports are. And these exhaust ports for the heat are where this heat is coming from. I'll answer some questions in a second here. I want to go do the video. So you see them zoom out right here as well. They were already zoomed in, got a real good look at everything, and then they zoom out. And they zoom out at the exact right time here. Like that's the exact moment the zap's going to happen, which to me indicates that they know from the pattern what's about to occur. Now also look at this here. You can see the heat signature in the orbs. See that heat signature in the orbs there? So again, there's no basis for anyone to even begin to fake this. There's nobody to copy it from. No one even knows what this would look like, right? So you can see these heat signatures and they're spinning. They're spinning around as well, which would indicate that what we're seeing here is superconductivity, superconductors that are spinning, that are creating what we call geodesics. And geodesics are basically the path that an object will fall through. So think of it like gravity. And because it is essentially gravity, is that if you throw something in the air, it's going to follow the geodesics of space and time. What they're doing here is they're creating their own geodesics. Now the zap you can see here is a cold event, this dark event that happens here. And you saw it the last second there, and I'll pull up the super slow-mo. It's a dark, cold event that only could be seen in the thermal like this, which indicates that this is more equivalent to a black hole. It's not an explosion. It's an endothermic event. Energy is being absorbed as opposed to shot outward. And I'm probably not saying that correctly. So let's look at some other videos here as well of this. And we can also take a look real quick at the time. So that second video was received June 5th, and it was posted June 12th. So this tells us a little bit of information as well. The first video did not make enough of a splash. That was May 19th. So 3 weeks later, they send the second video. Previously submitted satellite footage. So they're showing us another angle now. And this one, that didn't take long for him to post at all. So he was already probably convinced at this point that the footage was legitimate and just needed to be told, okay, here's a second video. Go shoot this one out there as well, because it's absolute proof. And keep in mind, this was May 19th for the first one. Now take a look at this. Regicide Anon makes a Twitter account May 22nd, 3 days later. Hello, Twitter, my first tweet. 3 days after the footage was uploaded. Please spread this video before it's pulled. And what does he tag? MH370. Bingo. Look at the first things. It just says airliner and UFOs. He just left out the MH370. In fact, maybe he wasn't even told that this is MH370. Because Regicide Anon, again, would be like us. Have no idea what we're even looking at's real. Have no idea what the context is. Probably didn't look at the satellite coordinates that we saw in there to be able to know where the location was, the Nicobar Islands. Something B, who's a Redditor, created this visualization here, which will prove to us that what we're looking at is 3D stereoscopic, meaning two different cameras. Okay, so in order to do this, he's going to basically switch quickly. And now look, when you switch, you can see the parallax effect, right? Very obvious parallax effect right there. This tells us we're looking at two different angles, okay? So we're looking at two different cameras here. You can even see it, and he zooms in here to make it even more apparent. That when you switch back and forth between A and B, you can see that the plane does not move, but we can see the motion of the parallax effect. Right? So this proves to us that what we're looking at is 3D stereoscopic imagery, which at this point, I don't think I've ever seen anyone even try to fake something like this. We're using all of the witnesses, all of them. All the witnesses point to the fire scenario, and it blows my mind that that was missed. I think the ping data might be the sketchiest part, but we can look at that as well. Weirdly enough, at the exact time where this happens, there's a huge anomaly in the ping data. There's two smoke trails because there's two exhaust ports at the landing gear bay for the heat exhaustion. Let's see, what else? Okay, so why did it not get attention? So if you're like me, some people actually saw some of the footage. I saw the thermal footage back in 2014, and I just didn't think that it could possibly be real because I didn't even know what drone footage looked like. You know, so when I was looking at this in 2014, I didn't know. I just closed it out. I thought, this is like, what is this supposed to be, right? But now in 2023, we have a huge basis to understand that this could be real because we've seen the 2017 leaks. We've seen the Trump satellite picture that he posted in 2019, and that told us what satellite capabilities might be like. We know that superconductivity, if we are not at it, we're at the verge of it from a public perspective, looking at LK99. And I know that's very controversial for some people, but I strongly believe that we are at least on the verge of superconductivity, if not already there from the public perspective. And then AI, when we're looking at that triangle pattern and those orb movements, that does not look like something that people are flying. It's not aliens flying around in that. That's a computer program running it. So let's look at this version real quick of that same thermal, but with the thermal layer stripped out manually by editing software. Now you can clearly see these trails, and you can clearly see they're in front of the orbs, pulling the orbs forward here. How would someone even think to fake this? Why would someone even fake it like that? That's just too unusual. This is what we're looking at here is superconductivity, and these orbs are creating their own geodesics, their own gravity, essentially. And that's why they seem to just be free floating throughout the sky. And that's why they can travel at Mach 3 speeds with no significant resistance. So that's really impressive stuff just watching it. Now, we've took the 3D satellite video just to even prove it further, and we actually were able to convert it to 3D. You can put on blue and red glasses, and you can watch this in 3D if you want. And we actually were able to show that these are how the systems work. They actually do 3D when the intelligence people are watching this, tracking planes, because it gives them depth perception. It helps them better to understand what they're looking at. And they're looking at a much bigger field of view here. So they would see the drone. The drone's just cropped out a screen there at the beginning. There might be other assets too. So this is what the military uses when they are doing, battlefield awareness for, whatever operations they want to conduct. And this user here just cropped it out for the most part. It's hard to see here, but in the very bottom, there are some satellite coordinates as well. Those satellite coordinates indicate the Nicobar Islands. So let's answer a couple other questions. Yeah, so deployed to save the plane. We'll get to that. We'll get to the plane stuff and in terms of deployed to save the plane. So widespread AI is what's basically, it would take so much computer processing to create that triangle pattern. And what they're doing there is it's tracking the plane. The zap is real too. The zap is accurately illuminating the clouds in the foreground and in the background. If you want to go through all this digital forensic stuff here, there's a ton of stuff that it would have to do to make this. And if this will then be corroborated by both the Marvel visual effects expert who we have on the record and the Top Gun Maverick expert who actually posted on Reddit as well, how they actually had to cheat in the movie they made in 2022. And they're not sure how someone would have been able to create this in 2014. So when I saw this proof and I realized that I have a security clearance, that makes it almost impossible for the government to discredit me. Not totally impossible. They'll try to find a way, right? And so that's part of the reason why I decided to be like the person who's the spokesperson for this. You know, for a lot of other people, there might be easy ways to discredit them, and then they'll discredit the footage, they'll discredit the case. But for me, it's a lot more difficult. So what they've tried to do, there's been a literal coordinated group of at least 15 to 20 people, perhaps more, who've tried to go through every aspect of my social fingerprints, anything they can try to find to try to discredit me. They tried to use a GoFundMe. I addressed that. They've tried to claim that I'm harassing family members, which is total nonsense as well. So these people are coordinated, and their whole goal is to try to discredit me, which goes to show their intentions, right? They're not trying to discredit the evidence. They're trying to discredit me personally. But I have not been threatened, and I haven't been afraid of the government since the first week. After I started getting the evidence out there to a wide audience, I realized that if they did do something to me, then it's just going to prove everything to be real. And that's still true now as well. But even if something did happen to me, I would not be, I would have no regrets. This to me, looking at this and what this all implies, is absolutely worth my life for anything that anyone would try to do to me. Now, looking at this, we can actually see in the last frame, the plane gets dark along the edges here as well, which I think, in my personal opinion, may indicate that these orbs actually are creating some kind of field around the plane, which is allowing for the whole plane to undergo what we would call macroscopic decoherence. And we'll have to take a look at the double slit experiment for you guys to really get a better idea of what macroscopic decoherence really means. But the idea behind macroscopic decoherence is that the plane is being reverted back to a wave function. It's going from a definitive point in space-time to a probabilistic point in space-time, which now allows it for traveling faster than the speed of light, which is how we come across things like quantum entanglement, quantum teleportation, non-locality is what they call it. And all of these things emerge from the double slit experiment, is realizing that if we look at the particles being shot through the slits, it changes the way they act. The only way it can be doing that is that they're somehow acting faster than the speed of light. And what we call that is the wave function collapsing. So what we're seeing here is the opposite of that. We're seeing the wave function be rebuilt, which is really far out there science, but it is supported now, only in the last few years. Yeah, so if it's superconductors, what are they doing? It's basically teleportation. In layman's terms, what we're seeing is teleportation. And again, it's rebuilding the wave function, and that rebuilding of the wave function now gives the plane a probabilistic point in space-time. And that's what allows what we would see as teleportation. Now, if you want to be really detailed, what's happening is the plane is somehow being converted to a Bose-Einstein condensate. The idea behind that is it's going from fermions, which fermions are, everything you see is basically made of fermions. And the reason why we would see something like this cup here is that all the fermions have to be in different places in space and time. But bosons don't have that requirement. Bosons can be scrunched down into a single point. And that's why we have things like lasers, okay? And so if we have a laser, those are bosons. So there was actually a YouTube video that was posted by Anton recently that proved that you can convert fermions to bosons. Now, only certain elements are supposedly able to do that, but I think the science we're seeing here is now showing there's another way to do that, where you can do it at a macroscopic level. Yeah, and just to be clear, this is not conjecture. This is hard evidence that we're looking at here. This is proof, okay? This is not conjecture in any way, shape, or form. So a lot of people want to claim that you can't know things. Again, that's not how it works. We have hard evidence. We're looking at it. We've built more evidence here than has ever been used in the history of the world to convince anyone of murder or probably any crime ever. We have 2 videos. We know the location, the time. We have a witness who is there as well. In addition to 10 other witnesses who will confirm the lithium-ion battery fire scenario. We have corroborating evidence that the fire scenario is consistent with what would happen, in addition to the orange glowing plane. So again, we have absolute proof that this is what happened. It's not conjecture. Yes, the drone and satellite footages are both perfectly in sync. So where's my side-by-side? So you guys should be able to see this now. So this will let you see that what we're looking at here is perfectly in sync with one another. So you can see that first orb's coming in. And keep in mind, this was manually put side by side. So it might be slightly off. But you can tell that they're in sync here. I mean, the formation here is just so weird watching it, right? And you can tell these things are not being affected by gravity. They're free floating throughout space. You can see them again, the heat signature, you can see spinning on their axis there. You can see that heat signature spinning on these orbs. And now they've got this vertical orientation, getting ready for the teleportation. And boom, zap, okay? So these videos are incredible. I've probably watched them 1,000 times, maybe more. I recommend you guys watch them a few more times as well if you want. And there's just simply no evidence that what we're looking at here is non-human intelligence for any reason. We can actually explain all the science behind it as well. So we don't need non-human intelligent explanations for this, and I prefer simpler explanation. Yeah, why are all these smart folks on one plane? That is really a big question, right? That's way too many people to be on the same plane, right? So I'm just going to switch up real quick and show you guys one of the most recent pieces here. Okay, so this, I call it free-scale superconductors. I'm being coy there, right? Free-scale semiconductors. They had 20 people on the plane. This is way too many people. Most companies have like a rule. You can only have 3 or 4 people on the same plane, just for incidents like this, right? And you can see these were people that had a lot of technical background and experience, top quality engineers that we're dealing with here. This is a big deal to lose these people. And we found a 2005 National Security Agency report that basically was looking into commercial use of superconductivity. And free-scale semiconductors is called out 9 times in this report. I put some excerpts here as well. They were aiming for industrial maturity by the 2010 to 2012 timeframe. That's 4 to 2 years before our events. And then at the bottom of the conclusion, without government investment, this will not happen. How much you want to bet they got that government investment, guys? And if they got that government investment, now the U.S. government has a motive to keep these people alive. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the initial reports that came out right after the incident. So initially all the initial reports said radar contact was lost at 1840 UTC. That changed weeks later when they released the radar data. They claimed it was 1822. All the initial reports said 1840 right at the end. That's the time our videos are happening. That's the time the witness saw the plane. Now, if you scroll down here, I'll just show you the images. I mean, look at this image. Lost contact at 240. This is 1840 UTC. This was the next day. All the initial reports were claiming that they lost contact at 1840. They had to lie. They had to cover it up. They had to pretend like it wasn't there. Look at this ping data. I went and looked at the real ping data, the official ping data on the SU log tab. You can look yourself. All the data is legit. Like all this data above here, there's dozens and dozens of rows that all look complete like this. You get to 1839, 1840 here, boom, it's just zeros. Nobody can tell me they looked at this data and went, no, there's nothing happened here. This is just normal. No chance. Something happened right at this time. It all lines up to 1840 UTC. So this plane, objectively, I'm going to state this as a statement of fact, did not crash into the South Indian Ocean. So the first reasons right here, the SOSUS system, which is the system that heard the Titan sub pop, and the Navy lied about it for 5 days while on CNN you're watching oxygen counters go down, and then after 5 days later said, oh yeah, we heard it pop, immediately. The SOSUS system would have heard this. If they're detecting a tiny sub pop near the Titanic, they're going to detect a 777 crashing into the ocean, guys. So they would have heard it. They would have known right away where it happened and when it happened. It would have been no question, and we would have found it right away. You also cannot have a no debris field for a 777 crashing into the ocean. 777 crashing into the ocean, there's going to be bodies everywhere, luggage everywhere, pieces of the plane everywhere. We would have seen it the next day from our satellites and various other things. Remember that Wagner Russia guy's jet? He had a tiny private jet. They had the debris field the next day on satellite imagery, okay? So they definitely were going to catch a 777 crashing into the ocean. Not possible for it to not leave a debris field. SOSA system doesn't detect it. Now, I said the wrong system here. Jordan is actually the radar system in Australia. The radar system in Australia, though, should have seen the plane if it went into the South Indian Ocean. They didn't see it either. Indonesia also had a radar system that should have seen the plane, also did not see it. Western Australia has hydrophones, and so does Diego Garcia. None of these heard any type of impact into the ocean. So again, completely impossible for this plane to have crashed into the South Indian Ocean. They would have detected it on radar. They would have detected it on two different hydrophone systems, and the SOSA system would have detected it. Not just that, there was 19 family members that claimed that they could call the cell phones of the passengers. 19, not one or two, 19. Okay, so let's go to this one. Proof that the satellite, and one person proved it right here. They're calling the phone. This is a recording of them proving it. The phone's ringing in this. This is a Chinese-only reported news station. They're calling their passenger phone and it's ringing. You know, that doesn't work. You guys want to test it out? Go ahead and have somebody turn off their phone and give it a call. It does not ring. CNN tried to have some expert come on and claim that this could happen. Yeah, go ahead and prove it, okay? Total bullshit. If a phone is underwater for even I think 30 minutes or so, especially in salt water, it's going to die. And I believe after it goes underneath a couple feet of water, you're not going to be able to get a signal. Plus, I actually have images of how far the cell phone towers extend. They don't extend out into the South Indian Ocean. So there's no chance that you would be able to call phones like this if they're in the bottom of the ocean, and especially not 19 of them. And they signed a statement. So if you go down here, 19 families signed a joint statement confirming they were able to make phone calls that were connecting to the missing passengers without an answer. That's a lot of phones calling, guys. Why would they not look into this? You'd be able to trace this and confirm that this is real, right? So the fact that they didn't look into this, super sketchy. I was trying to figure out what satellites it could be while people were modeling them. And so we were kind of working in tandem to figure out which satellites this could be, because I knew that we'd be able to figure out the satellite situation. I didn't know we'd be able to figure out as much as we did. So you can find out about these naval ocean surveillance satellites. And what are they used for? Electronic transmissions from ships. And they're in low Earth orbit here. Cluster satellites. So these are generally more than one satellite, right? Now, if we go down and scroll down here, you can look at all of them. These are the older ones. We needed something a lot newer. And these were the ones that were in triplicate. So we really need ones that are in 2000 and beyond, and probably even 2010 and beyond, because we're seeing some pretty advanced capabilities here. So we looked at some of these as well. We looked at actually all of them in general. But notice there's not that many. This is not a lot. And once we got down here, we pretty much narrowed it down to one of these two right here, USA 238 or USA 229. These are the ones we were thinking because we looked at the Trump leak, which let me pull that up as well. So you just Google Trump satellite leak. Look at this. So this satellite they were able to figure out is USA 224. And USA 224 was also sent up in 2011. So when I saw this, I said, wow, that looks very similar to what we are seeing in terms of optical capability or IR capability. Now, the big thing here is you can see a huge shadow on this. We can't see any big shadows or any shadows at all in ours, which indicate this is daytime, but ours is not daytime. So the people that reverse engineered this had a much easier job than we did because they could actually tell the time of the day based on this shadow here. Versus us, we had to literally look up every single satellite that's out there. So if you look, you see USA 229. There it is, right? And you can see it has an unnamed satellite right next to it as well. This is launch NROL 34. So this is our satellite that we modeled. This one, 238, is not in a different location, and then the rest of these are from 2015 or beyond. So here's a recreation of the flag. On the top of the screen up here, you can see the time. Let's watch this time. So we're 10 minutes before our event. You see this bubble over here. Most likely, this satellite sees way bigger than this bubble. Much, much bigger than this bubble, okay? This is just, I think we made it 1,000 kilometers. This probably sees many thousands of kilometers. Because it can see a very wide field of view. Notice there's these two satellites. USA 229 has two satellites that can create that stereoscopic effect that we see. So our satellites are floating along here. 1835. And now we're going to hit 1840 right in about 1 minute here, or 1839, that moment, like right here. So we're getting there, and we're looking right down at our point. At the same time that ping data happens, right here. Boom, there it is. Smoking gun right here. You're staring at it, folks. Satellites were in the exact right location to pull the data that they need to be able to build the satellite video that we see 3D stereoscopic. We're staring right at the coordinates. Where my mouse is, this is where Kate T's boat is. And so she sees the plane going right around her. So it's right about here, probably. The Not So Deep podcast made this one. So the plane takes off at 1642 UTC. It gets to the, it pulls back at 1630, takes off 1642 UTC. So about 40 minutes later, it gets to the Igari waypoint up here, which is where the plane goes dark. This is 64 seconds after the plane says, "Good night, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. This is the first event. This is when the batteries, the fire had probably already started here and gets to the point where a minor explosion happens. The plane most likely gets depressurized at this point, but possibly not, maybe not. But a fire definitely breaks out at this point. This point, 1721, is the same time where Mike McKay sees the plane on fire from his oil rig 300 miles to the northeast. Okay, he saw the plane on fire. He lost his job over it because they had to cover it up and discredit all the witnesses. A bunch of people along the coast here, 9 of them along the coast, hear a loud bang at reportedly 1720 UTC. This is indicative of this fire breaking out, right? So at this point, the plane turns around, okay? And what happens here is it turns around 10 minutes later while this plane's turning around here. There's some people who are on the coast right here, fishermen. They see the plane flying very low, unusually low. This would be indicative of the fact that the plane's trying to fly low so that the passengers have enough oxygen to breathe. So this turn that the plane makes, it's going directly Penang Langkawi International Airport. If you read the Wired article, this is the correct location for the plane to try to go to. It's slightly closer than Kuala Lumpur. The terrain is better, so that if this plane has to fly low, this is going to be the correct location for it to go to. You can read the Wired article if you want, which will outline this. So this is like very clearly here an emergency event. You're flying to the next airport. This is not what somebody who's suicidal would do. This is not even really a situation if it's a hijacking. If it's a hijacking, you're going to go direct B route to whatever your rendezvous point is. You're not going to try to fly over a commercial airport. So right when it was about here is where the fishermen are seeing it now. So we had people hearing it on the coast. We had Mike McKay seeing the fire here, but he did not see it crash. And he was clear about that. He thought it must have crashed because he saw it on fire. But as I found out yesterday from talking to my sources, it is consistent and possible for this plane to last all the way over here to the west where the boat is, while on fire, because the cargo bays are made to try to contain these fires. The fire suppression devices can temporarily stop the fire, but they're not going to be able to permanently stop the fire, okay? So this plane is flying over here and it gets to Penang. 1752, it gets over Penang. The co-pilot's cell phone pings the tower. This tells us they're probably trying to get help at this point. Now, does it mean the communications are out? It kind of indicates it, but it's not a certain thing at that point, okay? So what does it do at this point? It turns. So this is where I would presume they made contact with the government, right? Why are you going to this random waypoint over here unless you know that you're going to meet up with somebody? And probably the idea is that the assets had to be out here somewhere to rendezvous with them. Otherwise, you would probably just try to land the plane right here in the Malacca Straits, as opposed to trying to, go all the way out here to the Nicobar Islands. Now, this is where the radar data had been most likely modified so that they would throw us off the trail. And they said that this is the last time they talked to it. But when we looked at those reports just now, we know that 1840 was the last time they had contact with it, which is where Kate's boat is at. So our witness, we have this witness out here, Kate T. So she's on a boat going from Phuket, or from India to Phuket. Phuket's over here. And she sees now the glowing orange plane. And there's been a recreation of her sighting, and the sighting is consistent with basically the direction of travel of the plane circling around her boat. Now, interestingly enough, she got really unlucky and did not see the orbs or the zap effect because she went to go put the kettle on probably at the worst possible time. And when she came back out, there was no more plane anymore. I've talked to her personally. So interestingly enough, what happens here at this point then is the plane is coming over here, and now our videos come into effect. And now we see our videos. Remember, we already proved that the plane in our video is traveling south into the east. Ba-boom. That's consistent with going around here in a circle around this location right here. So when she sees the orange glowing plane, this is indicative of the fire having broken out, and the bromine gas in the halon fire extinguishing device having that chemical reaction that causes the plane to glow orange. Again, I've had a source corroborate that this would be consistent with what they would see. Keep in mind now, it's pitch black at this point, okay? So the reason why Kate can see it is probably from the glow of the plane. I mean, she'd probably see the plane anyway, but she can see that glow very clearly from it.
Hey, we reached another milestone today. 1,000 views in 2 days. I mean, I couldn't believe it at first. Here's how things usually look like. But there's still a long way to go. We must not be complacent. Please help me in my efforts to get this information out. Share this with anyone who might lend an ear and leave a subscription if you haven't. For a goal this big named Total Disclosure, all we need to do is to actively show interest. So press all the buttons on all the channels about this topic so we finally get to say hi to our cosmic neighbors. And stop these idiots from killing innocent intelligent life. By pure chance, I had the luck to see something incredible myself, so I know it's true. If we could just open this Pandora's box once and make the government look, you could literally see a UFO on live TV today yourself. I appreciate any help. See you next time. Bye.